Chapter 5 today, development and socialization. Let me go to here. There we go. All right. Development and socialization. One key adaptation that enabled humans to distinguish themselves from other proto-chimpanzee ancestors was the ability to learn and accumulate cultural information so well. This adaptation allowed humans to learn the requisite technologies and skills to stake out a successful existence in such diverse environments as ice-encased Arctic hinterland, the thick Amazonian jungle, the parched Kalahari Desert, and the dog-eat-dog corporate world of Wall Street. They were just talking about this. Something's happening. Where is it? Is it in the Arctic? They're losing the ice shelf, and they're wondering what's going to happen. It's a chunk of ice. Um, the Arctic is mostly an ocean. The Antarctic actually has land under it, under all the snow and ice, but the Arctic is mostly just ocean that's covered with ice, and they're losing it very rapidly. A sensitive period is a time is a sensitive period is a period of time in an organism's development that allows for the relatively easy acquisition of a set of skills. And we talk about this in developmental psychology all the time. That if you need to learn a language when you're young, if you learn it when you're young, there's very little struggle. There tends to be very little struggle, but if you have to learn language later in life, it's not very easy. If an organism misses the chance to acquire those skills, it would have a difficult time doing so later after the sensitive period has expired. And with language, of course, it seems to be up to age 12. After 12, it gets a little tougher. Before 12, you're okay. And for people that have moved to a country with a different language, sometimes the older people in the family are never able to master the language, whereas the children acquire it very rapidly. Human cultural learning continues throughout the lifespan. Language ability is a hallmark human characteristic, and although there are rudimentary language skills in some other species, no other species is as dependent on the language skills or has as complex a language system as humans. Humans are capable of producing, recognizing, and using approximately 150 phonemes, units of sound, in communication. However, no language uses more than 70 of them. So there's a possibility of 150 different sounds that you can make, and but no language uses more than 70 different sounds. People are not able to discriminate easily between phonemes that are not their own language. The Japanese language does not have separate phonemes for the sounds la and ra. Likewise, the Japanese language does not have a phoneme for va, although it does have a phoneme for ba. An adult who is exposed only to the Japanese language cannot perceive the differences between las and ras or between bas and vas, phonemes that sound obviously different in English speakers. To the Japanese, rubber is indistinguishable from lover. And this ties things up very often.
Up there, the drug company CEOs, lobbyists, and politicians like Marionette Miller.
Take the home with our glory. Tis the season to be jolly. No. Not ra 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 la 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 la. Sing like this. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Fa la 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 la. Try again. Deck the hall with boughs of holly. sing something else. Jingle bell, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. No, stop. Kitchen, bring food for customer. So,
Oh, yes, it's a beautiful duck. Yes, it really is. It's but you see,
what?
it's smiling at me.
Okay. Beautiful.
Yes.
That Christmas would live in our memories as the Christmas when we were introduced to Chinese turkey. All was right with the world.
A Christmas Story. That's always fun. And of course, that'll tie up the this video, but we won't worry about that. I think that's a very demonstrative demonstrative video. Where does English come from? From Celtic, crag, bog, whiskey, penguin, clan, plaid, shamrock, slogan, trousers, galore. Those are all Celtic words. Anglo-Saxon, apple, blood, cheerleader, iron, jump. Those are all Anglo-Saxon words. From Vikings, from Scandinavian languages, ugly, knife, die, cake, skull. The days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. From Latin, there's tons of words that come from Latin. Have, agriculture, casino, bonus, and fame. And from French, you get words such as priest, infantry, money, jury, isle, and music. Now, the interesting thing was that the English island was invaded by the French in 1066. The Normans invaded England at that time, and they brought over the French language. So a lot of in the English language is balanced between the Germanic languages, what that came out of Anglo-Saxon and the Vikings, and French. So there's a lot of French and Latin words in English, as well as a lot of German words. Now, interestingly, and this is something that most people don't realize because they say, pardon my French. Normally when they say pardon my French, they've said a word that they potentially shouldn't be using. But all of the curse words are Anglo-Saxon words. All the words that your mother would wash your mouth out for saying are all Anglo-Saxon words, and none of them are French. So that gets kind of interesting. The word for feces, of course, is a Latin word. The same word in Dutch is poop, and the same word in Anglo-Saxon is shit, as it were. That's just an example. And I use those words only because I've been sworn at a lot playing soccer in Europe. So I've been sworn at with a lot of different words. Research suggests that young infants can discriminate among all the phonemes that humans are able to produce. Native English-speaking babies of 6 to 8 months can reliably distinguish between two sounds from the Hindi language, but 10 to 12-month-old native English speakers cannot. Even 4-day-old infants already have a preference for the rhythm of sounds from their own language over other languages, and that's because they've been listening to their mother and father speaking. The closer the father was to the mother, then the more the baby would have heard the father's speech. Interestingly, the father's speech, because it's deeper, actually penetrates the womb better than the mother's high-pitched speech. So the baby is not only listening to the mother, but they're also listening to the father. This research suggests that we are biologically prepared to attend to human speech as we come into this world. We are predisposed to start picking up languages at an early age. Early in life, before puberty, our brains are especially pliable for organizing themselves in response to language input. Later on, our brains are not as flexible. Humans are better at acquiring and mastering languages early in life. For bilinguals who learn their second language later in life, one part of the brain is active when they hear their second language and another when they hear their native language. Both parts are in Broca's area. And that's Broca's area right there. It's only on the left side of your brain. You don't have a Broca's area on the right side of your brain. You only have it on the left side. But it's just behind the frontal lobe, the prefrontal lobe, and that's where your language is dealt with. Bilinguals who learned their second language early in life showed activation in the same part of the brain, regardless of whether they were hearing their second language or their native one. And of course, this allows them to translate automatically. Keller looked at the rearing practices of urban middle-class Germans, Greeks, Costa Ricans, and Indian Gujarati and Cameroonians. Observing how much bodily contact the parents had with infants, Keller found that European parents spend the least time in contact with their infants. And this is a child wearing a German soccer shirt, as is the mother. She's got a soccer shirt on as well. The infants from the other cultural groups spent the majority of their time being held by their mothers. During Keller's observation, this was in 2007, there was not a single observation when the Cameroonian infant wasn't being held by its mother. And this is a Cameroonian. And as you can see, the baby's on her back. Another variable that Keller investigated was the amount of face-to-face contact the mothers had with their infants. European mothers spent most of their contact time in face-to-face contact. This is not true of other mothers, especially the Gujarati. And this is a Gujarati, a woman that is Gujarati, even though she's making touching noses with her baby. They have less face-to-face time than any other culture that they studied. The responses of German mothers were more contingent to the baby's cries and behaviors than was found with the Cameroonian mothers, and this cultural difference predicted how quickly the babies learned to recognize themselves in a mirror. The more responsive their mothers were to their cries, the younger the child was able to show self-recognition skills. Learning that others will respond to their cries facilitates infants' recognition that they are a distinct entity. And that seems to be what's happening. Urban European babies tend to occupy their own physical space, and they are often in face-to-face contact with their mothers, putting them in a position to interact with their mothers as separate beings, as in turn-taking conversations, and their mothers are more responsive to their individual needs. In other cultures, infants share the same physical space with their mothers. Mothers are not as likely to be in a position to interact with their infants through face-to-face contact. In some regions of Africa, the Caribbean, and India, infants receive a daily massage and exercise regime, such as stretching their limbs or putting them into sitting positions. These experiences shape their development, and those who receive this kind of message and exercise begin to sit on their own and walk at an earlier age than those that do not. Cultural practices such as putting infants to sleep on their backs rather than their stomachs can delay when the children begin to crawl, roll over, or learn to stand. In cultures that do not encourage crawling, large proportions of the children never crawl, but instead scoot along on their butts or proceed directly to walking. And that's what my two kids did because we were practicing walking a lot. This is one of the ways that I interacted with them, was to hold them by the hands and let them walk along. Because I did that, they actually skipped crawling. Both of them skipped crawling and went right to walking. But I had a niece that scooted. She was a butt scooter. If you are of European descent and grew up in a North American household, the odds are that your parents set aside a room in their house, perhaps decorating it with pastel colors and scenes of romping bunny rabbits, and put a crib in it for you to sleep in. In a study of 136 societies, infants in 2/3 of these groups slept in the same bed as their mothers. In the majority of other cases, infants slept in the same room as their mothers, but in a different bed. American parents were the only ones in a survey of 100 societies who created a separate room for the baby to sleep in. The practice of co-sleeping is also quite common in other subcultures in the United States, with African Americans, Asian Americans, and Hispanics. The practice of people sleeping separately in their own beds has not yet been identified in a single subsistence society around the world, only in the United States. Schrader et al. In 1995 developed a study where they gave participants a scenario as to how a house how to house a family in 3 bedrooms consisting of a mother, a father, a son that's 15, a son that's 11, a son that's 8, a daughter that's 14, and a daughter that's 3. Now, how in the world are you going to how are you going to put these people in their bedrooms? So there's 7 people in the family. Mother, father, 3 boys, and 2 girls. 88% of the Americans given the scenario chose the following configuration. Room 1, the mother and the father. Room 2, the 2 daughters share the room. And room 3, the 3 sons share the room. And this is known as the Brady Bunch solution because that's exactly what happened on the Brady Bunch. The girls all slept together, the boys all slept together, and mom and dad slept together. Americans seek to avoid incest. The second most important principle was the sacred couple. Married couples should be given their own space for emotional intimacy and sexual privacy. The third most important principle is the autonomy, the belief that that young children who are needy and vulnerable should learn to be self-sufficient and take care of themselves. When people in India were given the same scenario, they based their answers on the following 4 criteria. Incest avoidance. Post-pubescent children of the opposite sex should not sleep in the same room. Protection of the vulnerable. Young children should not be left alone at night. Female chastity anxiety. Post-pubescent females should always be chaperoned. And respect for hierarchy. Post-pubescent boys are conferred social status by not having them sleep with parents or young children. Now this is really kind of interesting because I have a former student who is now a colleague who teaches a graduate school down in Valdosta, Georgia. Anyway, he's from Bangladesh, and it's kind of curious because he has had a single room all of his life. He comes from a family of 5 children. 3 of them are female and 2 are males. He's the oldest, and because he's the oldest male, he always got his own room, even though there's only 3 bedrooms in the house. So what the configuration in his house was that he had a room all by himself. The mothers slept with the daughters, the 3 daughters, and the father and the youngest son slept together on the floor in the living room. But Raj always got his own room. As curious as that is. One of the most popular configurations from India involved bedroom 1, mother, father, and 3-year-old daughter. Bedroom 2, 14-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son. And bedroom 3, 15-year-old son and 11-year-old son. A second popular Indian configuration involved bedroom 1, father and 8-year-old son, bedroom 2, 15-year-old son and 11-year-old son, and bedroom 3, mother, 3-year-old daughter, and 14-year-old daughter. North American children live in an environment where they are by themselves from a very early age and must cry out for their parents when they have needs to be taken care of. Children from many other cultures, in contrast, may live in an environment where their mother is always around. Often, as in many cultures, the children are literally carried by their mother throughout the day. Mothers do not need to be called to, as they are always present to respond to the children's needs. In 1971, Baumrind published her tripartite typology of parenting styles: the authoritarian parenting, low levels of warmth or responsiveness by parents to the child's protests; authoritative parenting, child-centered approach, parents maintain high expectations of maturity for their children; permissive parenting, parents are very involved with the children, much expressed parental warmth and responsiveness, parents place few limits and controls on the children's behavior. While Western parents are more demonstrative than most other parents, Chow in 1994 argues that training is a core part of the Chinese parenting. It is in an effort to make the children adhere to socially desired behaviors, often by providing the child with explicit examples of proper behavior, and it entails much devotion and sacrifice on the part of the parents. Contrary to Western findings, strong parental control has been found to be associated with increased family cohesion, perceived parental warmth and acceptance, and better academic achievement in China, Japan, and Korea. European American high school students viewed any pressure by their mother to be largely negative and indicative that they didn't feel supported by their mother. Asian American high school students didn't view maternal pressure as in negative terms. When Asian American students reflected on their mothers pressuring them to work hard on a task, they were more motivated to complete a task on their own. Japanese adolescents even feel rejected by their parents when they experience only little parental control and broader range of autonomy. However, authoritarian parenting styles, are defined by Baumrind, have been found to be associated with more stressed mothers and to lead to increased psychological maladjustment among children across a variety of both Western and non-Western cultures, including Chinese. In general, children are less happy with strong, controlling parents, and this effect is found across many cultures. There are obvious differences between parenting philosophies of North American and Chinese parents. North American children come to learn that they are independent agents to which their mother responds, whereas the Chinese children learn that they are relational beings who need to respond to their mothers. North American mothers are more likely to discuss their child's successes and positive emotional experiences with them, thereby emphasizing what the child is able to accomplish. Chinese mothers are most likely to call attention to their child's mistakes and transgressions, thereby elaborating on how the child needs to change to fit in better. Around the age of 18 months, young children enter a period of accelerated word learning when their vocabularies begin to increase dramatically. A great deal of research has indicated that this increase in vocabulary is not distributed equally across all different forms of words. The first words that children learn are nouns, and this is in English. The first words they learn is nouns. There's a great deal of evidence that North American children tend to learn nouns more quicker than verbs. Chinese children were found to use more verbs than nouns. There is no noun bias among Korean toddlers. A structure of English is such that nouns tend to come in rather salient locations, such as at the end of sentences. East Asian languages, such as Japanese and Korean, tend to place verbs in salient positions and at the end of sentences. Unlike in English, the Chinese, Japanese, and Korean languages allow for nouns and pronouns to be dropped when the context is clear. Westerners tend to perceive the world in a more analytic fashion, seeing objects as discrete and separate, whereas East Asians are more likely to perceive the world in holistic terms, stressing the relations between objects. It is plausible that the cultural differences in noun bias reflect this difference in thinking about the world. Japanese toddlers have been shown to have to make fewer demands on their parents than their American counterparts, and are less likely to assert their disobedience. Those occasions when Japanese toddlers do act unruly tend not to be viewed as signs of blossoming individuality, but rather as indicators of their immaturity. The developmental goal embraced by Japanese parents is much less a desire to see their children learn how to individuate and assert themselves than it is for them to learn how to accommodate to others and to become part of a harmonious social group. Many cultures demonstrated tendencies for adolescents to act in the rebellious ways familiar to the West. However, this was by no means universal. Rather, expectations for such antisocial behaviors were present in only 44% of societies with respect to boys and in only 18% of societies for girls. The majority of the cultures studied did not expect adolescents to behave especially disobediently. The notion that adolescence is universally associated with violence received little support. Rather, only 13% of societies expected adolescent boys to occasionally be violent, and only 3% of societies had such expectations for girls. The experiences of adolescents in Germany, Scotland, Japan, Bali, and Batak were compared, and the results indicated that both individualism and modernity seemed to increase the difficulties in adolescence. In particular, there appears to be more conflict between children and their parents in individualistic societies, where children seem to view parental control as a constraint they must resist. There seems to be increased adolescent distress, especially due to the sheer range of opportunities that confront children as societies industrialize and become more urbanized. One task in adolescence is to learn how to accept adult roles. This is much more straightforward when there are fewer role distinctions and when youths are more in contact with adults, as they are in more traditional agricultural societies. The number of choices has continued to grow, which has lengthened the period of adolescence, sometimes referred to as failure to launch or emerging adulthood. The transition to adulthood has been marked by 5 milestones: completing school, leaving home, becoming financially independent, getting married, having at least one child. In the United States in 1960, 77% of women and 65% of men had passed all 5 milestones by the age of 30. In 2000, fewer than half of the women, less than 1/3 of the men, had done so by this age. And of course, I did this at age 19. East Asian children spent more days in school, 240 days per year in Japan versus 180 days per year in the United States. A greater percentage of class time was devoted to math education in the Asian school day than in the American. Asian teachers spent a greater percentage of time lecturing in the classroom compared with their American counterparts, 90% in Taiwan compared to 46% in the United States. Asian math lessons, approximately 80% of examples were real world in Japan compared with about 10% of examples in American classes. Asian teachers assigned more homework to students. Fifth graders in the United States had less than half as much homework assigned to them as Taiwanese students, and these are Taiwanese students. Asian parents seem to view education as more central to their children's lives than American parents do. Asian parents are more likely to provide their children with a desk. One study revealed that 98% of Taiwanese fifth graders had a desk in their home, compared with only 63% of American kids. Stevenson in 1992 asked fifth graders to imagine that there was a wizard who would grant them anything they wished for. About 70% of the wishes listed by Chinese students had to do with education. They wished for success in school or to be able to go to college. In contrast, only about 10% of American children wished for things relevant to education. About 10% of American children wished for less school. The East Asian children are doing much better as a group on math tests than the American children, thus one might expect East Asian mothers to be especially satisfied with their children's performance. This does not seem to be the case. Rather, the American mothers report being far more satisfied with their children's performance than the East Asian mothers, even though it was not as good. Compared with mothers of first grade children, Chinese and Japanese mothers of fifth grade children reported that a higher standard of achievement was necessary for them to be satisfied with their children's math performance. In stark contrast, the standards of American mothers were lower for fifth grade children than first grade children. It appears to be far easier to meet standards of American mothers than East Asian mothers. This would suggest that American children have less reason to work hard at their studies than East Asian children. Numbers are harder to learn in English than in Japanese, Korean, or Chinese because there are more irregular numbered words in English. Irregular number words. East Asian counting systems incorporate the base 10 concept, which is necessary for learning how to do multi-digit arithmetic in a more straightforward way than English does. Thus, English speakers need more conceptual support for the base 10 concept than do speakers of East Asian languages. So it makes more sense to Asians than it does to Westerners. And that is the end of the chapter.